Let the minutes reflect that Mike Clondaris and Jeannie Stackhouse are absent. We do have a quorum with Brandon and Gordy and myself. So with that, any motion will require all three of those votes. So let's dive into the minutes from the June 6th meeting. Those were presented, and I'll ask if there's any additions or corrections to the minutes. If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve them as presented.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. We've got some visitors. Welcome, gentlemen. Appreciate you coming, and we'll find out later why you're here, right? Okay. Good. Appreciate it. All right, let's start with reports on communications. We'll start with the Lutheran EMS monthly report. Good afternoon.
How are you?
Good, yourself?
Good.
All right.
Hopefully you guys had a good holiday.
We did. Safe?
Yeah. So looking at our May numbers, you'll see a huge uptick from when you compare April to May, and we see that continue to climb, in fact, even into the month of June. That's not something that is new to us. We're used to the numbers as we get into the summer months continuing to climb. Numbers in the community are going to climb. The people are out and about, and things, traumas, things like that are routinely, we see that number kind of go up as the summer months come up. One thing that we did see during the month of May, we saw an uptick in respiratory emergencies, which is something we don't often see. We saw an uptick in our psychiatric emergency numbers. They actually doubled from what they were in the first quarter of the year to the second one. So I think that just helps support the fact of the CARES program that the fire department has and how important that is, especially in our community. So you will see those numbers reflected in our total encounters and then throughout our dispatch times. One thing that we did look at, you'll notice in the report, there was a small uptick in the number of calls taken by the Bourbon or even Milford stations. And one of the things that we found is majority of those calls were actually happening outside of that additional truck hours that we have coverage, so that outside of that 10 to 6 hour window, a lot of those calls were coming in during the weekend. In fact, when that truck is not in service. So it just really shows us the importance of making sure we have enough coverage and kind of looking at our evaluations and whether or not we don't increase our coverage hours specifically with that truck. So otherwise, that's all I have. Any questions?
So you had an increase in 46 encounters, but 25 of those were canceled. You had a really high, you went from 55 to 80, you jumped 25,
Yes.
Increased the number of calls canceled. Is there an explanation to that?
So some of those were accidents that happened that people would call 911 and say, that the accident has happened. They've seen it, they drove by and they were not really sure, is what a lot of those were. And the other ones that we saw an uptick on the call canceled was in situations where somebody fell and maybe didn't have any injuries. And when we got there, they were already up, or things like that that were not needing our services.
But those are typical reasons for calls being canceled.
Yeah, but we
my
saw
question is-
way more of those
Okay,
this month.
got
Yeah,
it.
specifically those two. There are multiple other reasons
Yep.
that calls are canceled, but specifically this month, those two numbers significantly went up.
Okay,
Yeah.
appreciate it, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Others? Questions? All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, Chief, you going to give the monthly fire activity report?
I will, and I'm not going to go into huge detail and bore you with the numbers, but the main line at the top says it all. 286 calls for the month of May, definitely getting busier. The main focus I want everybody to look at there is 101 incidents, overlapping calls at 35%. That's even up from last month, and it's just going to be continuing to trend that way. So just ever mindful of our services are more and more demand, more and more and getting creative on how to answer those calls when we're already out on calls. Mutual aid, going down there, I would go back down and focus more on where the CARES stuff would be at, the other calls in the service area, and let Chief Fansel cover that when he wants to, or if he wants to step in and do it now. I really don't want to, unless you have questions for the details down there.
Detailed breakdown by incident type. It's showing obviously a high number of medical assist. Is there a CARES category as far as the code? Like a 111 is a building fire.
It will show it on the report
So,
under service cause and on the
yeah, it was
report that we write up.
the 510, the 550, and the 554.
Yeah. I have it in parentheses. There's 3 different categories they can put them in.
Mayor's there under service calls.
Okay, and let me go back.
So, for example, if you go down underneath there where it says person in distress,
Oh, got it.
510, there's 22
Got it.
of them.
Okay.
Now, not all of those are CARES though either, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so unless we were to break those down by actual incident number, most of those are going to be lumped into CARES, but there's a few of them that aren't, so.
Okay. All right, just curious where that was. I found it. Thank you.
And again, underneath there's training hours, always mindful of how much time and energy goes into training and other pub ed events. 586 hours in May. So, and then if you look down underneath there again, is the pub ed events and other programs that we run out in the public. Just can't state enough how much the crews do with the hours that they have, so.
Okay. So you anticipate that your call volume increase would be seasonal, similar to EMS?
It is traditionally. June, July, August, September are always busy. Then when it seems like school goes back in, for some reason, things tend to
Settle down.
settle a little bit.
Okay. All right. Guys, got any questions? Okay. All right. Thank you. Chris, CARES monthly update.
So I believe Shirley added the little newsletter thing that Michaela makes into your packet there. That is, so just to clarify this, because I think there was some confusion. This actually is for the month of June. Our numbers are small enough that we're able to stay a little more on point. We don't have everything to review that Shirley and Chief Mayo do to get the month out, so we're able to stay a little more up to date. So you can kind of see we had 6 mental health service navigation consultations. Some of those take quite a while. We kind of walk alongside people as they enter into that world and just make sure they get what they need. And I'm not going to go through each of these. We're still seeing more law enforcement referrals. We're still having engine crews as they go out do referrals to us. And just to clarify a little bit, the 510, 554, and 550, I believe, were the 3 codes. Engine companies will utilize those on those same lift assists without injury. If they're considered just a citizen assist call, they'll use some of those codes in reference to that. Now, interestingly enough, when they do that, a lot of times they'll check those as a CARES referral, and we see them later because of the situation they're in. So they kind of commingle a little bit. Anybody have any questions on that? One thing we are doing is August 1st and 2nd, we're hosting a crisis response training for law enforcement. We've sent that out to local law enforcement in the area. It is a crash course in how to deal with mental health responses and how they're going to approach those people and how to interact with them. The goal being that after we do this 2-day course later on in the year or after the first of the year, we'll do a full 40-hour crisis intervention training, which is a law enforcement certification course. We will be the host for it, is our goal. We're not eligible to be CIT certified because we're not law enforcement, but we've worked with local law enforcement to try to get some of their folks certified better to deal with those situations. Some counties have adopted that as specialized training for some of their officers to respond to mental health calls. So it should be good. We're looking forward to it. Any questions for me?
Okay.
Okay. One other thing I did want to bring up, I don't have a contract for it yet, so there's nothing to present to you. We were notified by the opioid matching funds that we did, and we asked if we could apply. We were in a crunch when we did it. We didn't know what the numbers looked like. We applied for $137,816, and we were actually awarded $376,231. We're still working with FSSA to figure out what that looks like, what that money's going to be used for. We have not received a contract yet. Certainly, as soon as we do, you'll be aware of that. Andrew will be aware of that as well, just to make sure that we're following the rules as we go down that road. So pretty excited about what that means, but we don't have the contract to even look at yet. So as we get better, we'll let you know.
I think it's important to note that when you and I talked about that, getting almost 2.5 times what we asked for, I said, why? And you said, because they like our program. They like
Yes, sir.
what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's that's testimony to how far we've come in such a short time.
Yes, sir.
So thank you. Any other questions? Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Chief, back to you, dollars and cents. The appropriation report, we'll start with 2243, the operating fund.
Yes, sir. Of course, the bulk is payroll, insurance, pension, et cetera. If you go down, some of the larger numbers are going to be diesel fuel, for $3,800, and this through the completion of April. So these are May's numbers, obviously. That was just about the only one that really stood out to me as being a little outside the box on our expenses through April to May. Pending your questions on the operations budget.
Not me. Gentlemen?
Just out of curiosity with this, there's a foam in there. What, you see the ads for the,
PFAS?
yeah, so what's the new foam that's being used?
I would have to ask with Chief Bollinger just to be 100% certain, but I think most of the foam in the state, and if anybody in the gallery wants to offer in on this one, I think most of it is being phased out that had PFAS positive chemicals in it, and I think the state is still buying back the bulk of that from the fire departments that had any of that residual in it. I think most of our stuff is pretty good. Correct? Yes. Thank you. Yep.
Just happened to think of that, I saw the foam on the line item.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, with that, is there a motion to approve the expenditures? Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, and then we'll look at 4410, Equipment Replacement Fund.
Equipment replacement fund, again, scrolling through there, there doesn't seem to be huge ticket items in there for expenses. I think through April, I think that was $3,000 worth of expenses. I do know that we have been diligently trying to purchase down a lot of things that were slated for the year, but of course, trying to keep in mind raising costs, getting quotes, sticking with the quotes, and then getting it through the approval process. And for example, is some of our PPE that we're getting is the new tactical vest to replace the old EMS tactical vest that we have. PPE turnout gear, I think we had a sizable amount come through, finally get invoiced, that's getting paid out. What else? A fit test machine. There's just a host of things that were approved for fiscal '23 that we're getting around to purchasing. So as the year goes along, you're probably going to see more and more of those come through that were slated for the budget.
Just general question on turnout gear, how frequently does that need to be replaced?
We are in the 10-year rotation, and I think we're doing pretty good. All my peers will tell me that the chemical fire that was how long ago? Was eight years ago-ish?
At least.
Something like
So,
that.
so that is the one hiccup that as I go through our budgeting, that seems to be the reoccurring thing with our PPE is that fire and whoever attended that fire, that gear that got whole place replaced during that time frame, those are starting to come due. And so that may hit us fiscal '24, fiscal '25, but it's all being budgeted out. We have a pretty decent replacement, but of course, cost is just astronomically going up faster than anything else, so.
How much does a set of turnout gear cost roughly, gun to the head?
I will defer to the subject matter expert,
It's well over $3,000.
$3,000?
but that only is what?
That's just your coat and pants, not boots, gloves, hood, helmet.
Right,
Right,
that's the basic, yeah. Thank you,
Full gear.
yeah.
appreciate it. Okay. All right, other questions? Is there a motion to approve the expenditures from the equipment replacement fund?
So moved.
Second.
All right, further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Good. All right, let's jump into new business. Looks like we've got a Kosciuszko County Foundation grant. Chief, I'll let you explain that one.
Miles, if you would?
So we applied for that Roundup grant, and we were awarded $3,000. So we're just asking permission if we could
Accept the grant.
accept the money.
Yep.
I went ahead and got a quote for the 8 thermal imaging cameras with the keepers on it. Our budget that we're going to have to go ahead and make do is we will be paying, the department will be paying $1,271. The other $3,000 will help offset that cost.
Questions?
And again, again, this can't be understated how much this puts us in the positive for safety, is putting a thermal imaging camera on each person, on each fire engine that we have. So the company officer will obviously have the bigger, more in detailed, technologically advanced one, but every riding seat will actually have one to wear on their PPE. So that's a game changer, it really is. And Miles is right, the grant covered $3,000 that we don't have to repay. The territory will have to pick up the $1,200, basically overage that we can take out of the equipment replacement fund. So it's a phenomenal deal. Good work.
And I have the
Miles.
updated quote if you guys would like to see.
No, I'm good. Is that the amount that you put on here? 4271.92?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe you.
Okay. Well, we thought it was gonna change with like everything else going up, so luckily enough it stayed.
Questions?
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, great. So is that a motion to approve?
That's a motion to approve.
Good.
Second.
All right, any further discussion?
Thanks,
All in
Miles.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, Miles. Appreciate it. All right,
So the next component is the First Due software. We are currently already using First Due for a large portion of what we do inside the territory. We're actually going to be eliminating one of our other data systems and combining it in with First Due. So there was a little cost increase, but also a little savings increase because we're eliminating one redundant software warehousing and merging it into another. But in First Due, we're actually adding other modules, which will drive the cost up a little bit. But it's a faster, better, more efficient way of doing business.
just generally explain what First Due does, what it is.
First Due, again, is a data resource management warehouse for us, software that encompasses our daily staffing on the rigs. It does inventory, it does hose. In the future, it will do our incident reporting, which is now in the other software that we're merging in. It'll help a little bit more with inspections, hydrant locations. It does provide our responder software to the phones so that we can get them on our mobile devices. And it'll also give us some updated information. For example, a facility inside the city that has some chemical issues right now, we've put a warning on that, so when the responders are en route, it pulls up and lets them know that this is not just a standard building we're responding to. It's got some special hazards going on. So.
What software did it replace? Or
Well,
which one did you eliminate?
So
to
emergency
expand this?
reporting is the one that's going to eventually be phased out at the end of the year. So
What
we're
did
not.
that do? How were you using that?
It did our NIFRS reporting, which is the reporting software that you have to push up to the state and the federal level of every incident that you go on. This one will also have EPCRs, which is the electronic personal care, patient care record, thank you. So it'll actually be expanding out its duties a little bit more too.
Okay. All right, questions? All right, is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second?
All right, any final questions, further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. Finally, we've got a list of travel requests. Chief, anything you want to go through on these?
Nothing in particular. Chief Bollinger is going to attend the IERC conference downtown Indy, which is, it's good to have representation down there. That's a little bit more local than like the FDIC conference that's international. This one's basically just the state of Indiana. It'll have some guest speakers that are from, the state of Indiana, which is always great. We've also got some other classes in there that are not traditional, such as nozzle forward. Matt Koldyke, that just came off probation a month ago, is going to that, and that's great for entry-level tactics on how to move hand lines and such. So it's nice to see the warmer weather, everybody getting out and doing a little bit more training. So
All right. Questions? Is there a motion to approve the travel request as presented?
So move.
Second?
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. Are there any other matters to come before the board? All right. I don't believe there are any items carried forward. Any comments or questions from our visitors? All right, well, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you.
Did you see my email back this morning?
I did.
Okay.